Since my absence from YouTube and the Jurassic community in general, I've never really been able to discuss or express my opinions on Jurassic World Rebirth. Sure, this movie may have came out months ago and it might be too late to review it now, but since I am starting this channel again, I feel like it's only right that I discuss the latest Jurassic movie. But before I start, I do want to say that my opinions have changed on the Jurassic World movies in particular. I have a lot of nostalgia for the first Jurassic World movie, but since my absence, I started to immerse myself with the older fan base and started to realize how flawed this movie actually is. Most of the characters weren't well written. The using dinosaurs as weapons was pretty dumb, and the infamous "nothing in Jurassic World is natural" quote. Listen, I can understand why people don't think it makes sense for frog DNA just to simply make it so that the dinosaurs can reproduce, but there's no way you're gonna convince me that frog DNA made the velociraptors as tall as humans and completely featherless. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the first Jurassic World was a bad movie, but the truth is, it might not actually be a good Jurassic Park movie, is all I'm saying. As for Fallen Kingdom, this was a movie I used to enjoy, but boy, all I gotta say is what bad standards I used to have back in the day, because this movie was actually pretty bad. And as for Dominion,
that is one big pile of shit.
I was really hoping that Universal would learn from their mistakes. Whether they did or didn't, let's jump into the movie and see. The movie opens in the science lab where they are containing the mutant dinosaurs, and apparently a candy wrapper ends up getting stuck in this air vent, which somehow breaks the doors and causes the mutant dinosaurs to escape. Not really sure how that makes a lot of sense. This is the part of the movie where we are introduced to the Distoris Rex, or as I personally like to call it, the Belugasaurus. I'm pretty sure you can see why. Okay, jokes aside, these mutant dinosaurs are barely utilized and only really show up at the end of the movie, which is pretty disappointing. I mean, it wouldn't have at least be interesting to explore the origins of these creatures, like how they were created, why they were created, stuff like that. Along with this, we are also shown that the dinosaurs on the mainland have either died out or migrated to the equator, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, we had years of buildup for dinosaurs on the mainland interacting with humans, only for Dominion to screw it up with having a plot about some oversized grasshoppers. Listen, I understand the whole point of Rebirth is to be a reboot of the franchise, and they clearly want to scrape that train wreck under the rug, but after all that build-up, only to throw it out the window in favor of dinosaurs isolated on an island, something that we've seen a lot already, feels a bit like a slap in the face. There's also a few flaws with that logic as well, because since when were dinosaurs only adapted for tropical environments? I mean, there's even dinosaurs in this universe, like the Pyroraptor, which are adapted to cold environments, so, what? And to add insult to injury, it's also stated that everyone is bored of dinosaurs. What the frick? It's not like people get bored of living animals. I mean, in a world where dinosaurs are brought back to life, suddenly nobody cares? Doesn't make any sense. I have already seen a lot of people criticize the plot for being a bad video game quest, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I feel like the biggest problem for me that plagues this movie has to be the characters. A lot of them feel really basic, and there's not too much depth. Even when they try to make them interesting, they completely fail. The main character, Zora, for example, is pretty much a basic mercenary type character, which they tried to give her this tragic backstory, which was pretty poorly executed, 3 of the characters don't even have any characterization and only really exist to be cannon fodder. And their deaths don't really seem to affect the other characters and are pretty much forgotten about as if they didn't even exist in the first place. The family group especially don't really have anything that makes you want to care about them, neither do they even contribute much to the plot, so they feel like a completely pointless waste of screen time. And also, the only reason why they're in this story is because the Mosasaurus attacked their boat. And let's really think about this. In a world where prehistoric animals pretty much dominate the equator of the Earth, you think sailing boats would be restricted in these areas, right? On a side note, I will say I actually quite like most of the dinosaur designs in this movie. Mosasaurus, for example, has a nice shade of green that I really like, and also got rid of those weird osteoderms that the original Jurassic World Mosasaurus had, which in my opinion makes it look a little bit better. I personally really love the new Quetzal design. I think I might actually prefer this one over the Dominion one. There's just something about the colorations on this one that just looks a little bit better to me. Well, maybe the one thing I don't like about this design would be the beak, but other than that, I think it's pretty solid. And of course, there's the notorious Spinosaurus redesign. I have noticed that there's a lot of mixed opinions about this, but for me personally, I think it looks pretty good. Sure, it's not as cool looking as the real-life Spinosaurus, in my opinion, but I think it's pretty decent for a Spinosaurus design. However, the only real problem I have with this design is with consistency, because this is obviously completely different from the original JP3 Spinosaurus, which is a bit of a problem. It's suggested that the Rebirth design is a different variant of Spinosaurus, which I gotta call the BS on. These are completely different animals. This is a similar problem I have with most of the Dominion designs. Truth be told, I actually love feathered dinosaurs, but we have to remember Jurassic Park was made in a time before we knew dinosaurs even had feathers to begin with, and was made in universe that the dinosaurs were scaly. So when you add feathered dinosaurs into this universe, now we have to explain why some dromaeosaurs are scaly and why others are feathered. You see, there's a bit of a problem. Oh, and if you think all this can be justified with the frog DNA or the nothing in Jurassic World was natural nonsense, hate to break it to you, but no. There are a ton of problems with this logic, and I do not have the time to talk about that right now. All I'm saying here is that consistency matters more than scientific accuracy, because they're just movies. They don't have to be exactly like real life. As for the plot of the movie, yeah, I can definitely see why people are comparing this to a terrible video game quest. So basically, they're collecting dinosaur DNA for medicines. I don't know about you guys, but using dinosaur DNA for human medicines sounds like an accident waiting to happen. And apparently they need the blood specifically from the biggest dinosaurs, or creatures in this case, which wouldn't that just be sauropod? I mean, why specifically Titanosaurus, Mosasaurus, Quetzalcoatlus? It sounds pretty Pacific, and I will also argue that the Quetzal, yes, it is pretty big, but it's nowhere near as massive as the other two, so why Quetzal? I don't think I can talk about Jurassic World Rebirth without talking about the sad attempt at a novel adaptation. I am pretty biased here, as I myself have never actually read the original Jurassic Park novels, but from my research, the novel did a way better job at making the scene feel suspenseful. There's something about this scene that feels kind of shallow. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it doesn't really seem as impactful as the event that took place in the novel. If anything, this scene was made to be fan service / nostalgia bait to attract older fans. The climax of the movie is pretty much the characters trying to survive the mutant dinosaurs. which are also a pretty weak part of the movie as well. Along with being underutilized, I don't really find their designs to be very interesting either. The so-called Mutodon, for example. Mutodon my ass. This is clearly a hybrid between a velociraptor and some type of pterosaur. This is not a mutant, it's a straight up hybrid. Unlike most of the other hybrid dinosaurs, at least it looks like a combination between the two animals, but despite that, I don't think it looks very good. Dare I say there's like something AI generated about this design? I don't know, maybe it's just me. Also, I will never forgive these stupid things for killing off the velociraptors like this. Damn. I find it pretty sad to see the velociraptors downgraded like this. They haven't been treated as a proper threat since the very first Jurassic World movie. Since then, they kind of devolved into nothing. As for the Disortus Rex / Belugosaurus, what do I really have to say about this design is that it looks kind of stupid. I'm sorry. Like, with that big bulbous head and that, like, the weird arms, like... Personally, I think they could have done something a lot better for a mutant dinosaur design, but I guess this is what we got. I mean, what happened to that two-headed raptor? I mean, that would have been way cooler to see, in my opinion. Also, the size of the Distortus Rex also seems to be very inconsistent. In one scene, it's large enough to destroy a helicopter as if it's a kaiju, but later in the movie, it's somehow shrank. What? As for the ending of the movie, long story, the character Duncan sacrifices himself so everyone can escape. At first, it seems like Duncan died a hero, sparing his life so his friends can get off the island safely. But not too much later, he somehow survived? How did he even escape? Like, the D-Rex was literally on top of him. There was nowhere for him to run, but somehow we are expected to believe that he miraculously escaped. Like, this movie is a complete mess. There are other problems with the movie that I have not been able to talk about, like characters making dumb decisions and stuff, but I just want to say, this movie to me feels more like a soulless cash grab than a faithful reboot. The story itself is pretty bland, and the characters are not very interesting, and it still makes a lot of the mistakes that plague this franchise. For me personally, this movie takes the silver medal for worst film in the franchise. And those were my thoughts on Jurassic World Rebirth. I know this is very different from what I used to upload, but I believed it was necessary to talk about. If there's anything I missed or any mistakes I made, please correct me in the comments down below, and have a good rest of your day.